Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just did a little bit of a lengthy review of the Texas-Michigan game. I am picking Texas in that one to win 27-13. Feel very, very iffy about that one, but at the end of the day, that is what I'm going with. And now we got to talk about the Cy-Hawk Trophy. If I wasn't going to talk about this one this week, then I was not a college football fan, because this is one of the best games of the year. It is ugly, it is a rock fight every single time, and I love it every single time. So, cannot wait for this one this upcoming weekend. This one's at 3:30, so went a little bit beyond the noon slate, but we'll get back to it in the next segment. But Iowa favored by 2 points. Let's just get to the graphic here, why don't we? Iowa favored by 2.5 in this game, over under 35.5, as you can imagine in a game like this, but this one's really fun. There's no doubt about it. Iowa State had a very gross performance against North Dakota this past weekend, but North Dakota was really able to slow the clock down. They had a 12-minute field goal drive, which was outright crazy to watch. But at the end of the day, there is a ton to like about this Iowa State team. 3 really, really talented wide receivers out there. And on the other side, Iowa has an offense. At least through week 1, they have an offense. They had 3 wide receiver touchdowns last week. They had 6 all of last year. So they're kind of flying on offense, at least in terms of Iowa standards. But at the end of the day, this is the Cy-Hawk Trophy game. This is the game that always is a rock fight. I tend to expect the same thing, but maybe we get a couple more points this upcoming year. But let's get into players to watch here. Oh, excuse me, I apologize for that. Let's get to players to watch here. Eli Green, a transfer over from North Dakota State, very talented kid. He actually got to face his old rivals in North Dakota this past weekend. This is a really, really talented kid. Everyone knows about Jaden Higgins. They know about Jalen Noel, the 2 really, really good wide receivers on this team. They need a counterpunch, and it's going to be this kid. Isaiah Alston from Army is another guy to watch. Shout out Isaiah, one of my buddies, so a little connection there. But Bo Freeler is another guy I want you guys to watch, a safety for Iowa State. This kid can fly around, and he plays really smart football, one of the big-time high IQ safeties, and there are a couple others on the other side for Iowa as well. But at the end of the day, this is a huge-time player, especially against someone like Cade McNamara, where maybe you can get a mistake from time to time with him. And then moving on to Iowa, Reese Vanderzee put on a show in week 1. I believe had 5 catches, over 60 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he's a freshman. So it makes you feel very confident about what Iowa can do going forward with this kid. And I think it's about getting the ball in that kid's hands as early as possible, because you're at home. Everyone knows this kid's name. He's the hot name on the block right now. If you get the ball in his hands early, the crowd's going to be into it very, very quickly. And we'll get to that in a couple of little slides here. But Aaron Graves is the other guy I want to talk about. He was dominant in their week 1 performance. Obviously, played not so great of a team, but at the end of the day, was an absolute force. I believe had 3 sacks in that game, was just all over the place. So this is one of those guys where if Iowa State does not come prepared, if Jared Hufford, the very talented left guard for Iowa State, is not ready to take on this challenge, they're going to be in trouble. We saw last year Jared Hufford did not play very well against T'Vondre Sweat. Maybe another really talented defensive tackle can take advantage of him this time. But I like to think that this is going to just be one of the most fun battles that we won't talk about too much. But Jared Hufford against Aaron Graves is a very, very interesting one to watch throughout this game. Excuse me, I apologize. I want to do stats to remember real quick. A couple of stats to remember. Cyclones have won 7 of the last 8, so they've been on a little bit of a tear. And then Iowa State is winless when intercepting no passes. So if they can get Iowa to turn over the ball, they got to feel really confident in what they can do on the football field. But if Iowa stays clean, if they can keep Cade McNamara safe, then they're in really good shape overall. As a 2.5-point favorite, Iowa has gone 3-5 against the spread, so has not necessarily been all that pretty. And then on the other side, as a 2.5-point underdogs or more, Iowa State has been 3-3 against the spread. So definitely a little bit better, all things considered, roughly around where you think they would be, being a 2.5-point spread. Because as I've said on here before, I think anything in between like 4 points and down isn't really an upset. It's pretty much of a toss-up game, especially in college football. And then 2 of Iowa's games out of the 14 it played last year went on the over in the point total. So as you can imagine, with an Iowa game, you might just want to go to the under, but I might just give you a reason to go over later on in this. But let's get into how Iowa State can win this game. They're obviously away from home. They got to do some different things to make sure they come out on top, and the biggest one to me is let Cade McNamara beat you. We know what the Iowa run game is. We know that Caleb Jackson is a monster. We know that physical offensive line is going to be a problem to deal with. We also know Cade McNamara has played inconsistent football in the past. I think he has made big-time strides, and he's looked really good. Obviously, last week looked absolutely awesome, but this is a totally different beast. And I think the best way to do it is say, we're going to sell out on the run. We are going to make sure that Caleb Jackson is not the player that beats us. And then if Cade McNamara throws for 400 yards and hits every single spot and does everything they want him to do, you live with that and you move on. But at the end of the day, if you're going to pick your poison in this Iowa offense, if you're going to decide which way you want to go, you definitely want to stop Caleb Jackson and then allow Cade McNamara and these receivers to have their shots. Because then on the back end, you have Beau Freeler, you have Jontez Williams, who are really good players and played great on Saturday, that absolutely can make those plays. So I would just make Cade McNamara beat you. Sell out on the run, make sure that that's stopped. But at the end of the day, make sure that that guy, number 12, is throwing the ball, and then just pick your spots. Get a couple of big-time takeaways and a player that has been known to give you some takeaways. If you can get those throughout Saturday, then you're in really, really good shape if you're Iowa State. And then find the run game. Last week, it was not pretty for Iowa State in the run game. 3.9 yards per carry. Abu Sama, who should be one of the just linchpins of this offense, only had 36 yards on the ground. They have to get that going a little bit stronger, and Iowa State's O-line has a good interior. Jared Hufford is a very talented player at left guard, but Iowa's front is very stout as well, with Aaron Graves and with all of the Brian Allen and other really talented players. So they're going to have to figure some things out, whether it's getting Abu Sama out on the edge and letting him work out there, whether it's using Rocco Becht a couple of times on the read option play, which I very much think they need to do in this game. But at the end of the day, some way, somehow, you got to find more rushing in this game, because then those receivers on the outside that you want to get the ball to are not going to have nearly enough space against a very good secondary. And that's the other part of this. Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, they are going to be the best offensive players on the field by a mile on Saturday. They are remarkably talented players, and getting the ball in their hands as early as possible is the way you want to go about business. This Iowa back end is downright incredible. Sebastian Castro, Xavier Nwankpa, they make so many big-time plays on that back end, and if you're throwing the ball 10, 15 yards downfield, that's just more time for Sebastian Castro or Nwankpa to make a play, and you do not want that. So getting the ball into Jalen Noel's hands on a drag route 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, or Jaden Higgins on a curl 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, and just letting them make the plays they can with their legs is probably the best way to go about business. And then you have guys like Eli Green, Isaiah Alston that can absolutely make a play. So a ton of really talented wide receivers, but the best way to go about business is just stay as far away from that secondary as long as you can, and then see what happens, see if they can break a couple of tackles and take one to the house. But moving on to Iowa, how can they win this game? First of all, go the opposite direction of what I just said for Iowa State. Keep Cade McNamara's confidence really high, and it comes back to make sure that everything is really comfortable, especially in the first 15 scripted plays. It's got to be really comfortable. It's got to be, running the ball with Caleb Jackson, then getting a couple of play action where you release him out to the right and he does a nice little easy pass to a tight end or a running back to get him 5 yards. It's got to be really comfortable stuff early on, and then maybe you can open up. But at the end of the day, this is a player that has had trouble with that confidence level, has had trouble with, making sure that he's in a position to make all of the plays and feel confident to make all of those plays. Getting him going in a game that is going to be very intense, that is going to be loud, that's going to be wild, is going to be huge for this team. So if they can make sure that he is confident after that first drive and feels great about his game going into the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, they're going to be in really good shape offensively and possibly be able to make a number of other plays in the past game that they were able to make last week. And then keep Abu Sama out of this game. I know I just talked about how he really struggled in week one. That doesn't mean this dude isn't as dangerous as anyone on that Iowa State team. Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins are downright special. Abu Sama's not too far behind him. This dude can make so many different plays, whether it's coming out of the backfield, making a catch, whether it's running in between the tackles, outside the tackles, making linebackers miss. There is not a matchup that you can put on Abu Sama and feel really confident in. Now, they have a couple of really good linebackers over there at Iowa with Jay Higgins and I'm blanking on the other name. I very much apologize. But Jay Higgins is a very talented player, and I tend to believe he's going to get a lot of Abu Sama on Saturday. So keeping that guy in check is absolutely huge. Figuring out a way to make sure that he doesn't make that big-time play along with Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, you're going to be in really good shape. And this defense is very good at taking people out of games, so I would expect you see a lot of Abu Sama trying to get the ball, but then a lot of those linebackers just flying to the ball and trying to make sure that he does not get anything after the catch, which will be a really, really fun thing to watch. If Abu Sama gets going, this is a very, very hard offense to stop. But then the biggest one to me is start fast. You're at home. You have fans excited about this new offense that just put up a ton of points through the wide receivers for the first time in probably forever. It's a rivalry game. Get on the board early. Iowa, if you're the Iowa head coach going into this game, if you're Kirk Ferentz, I'm saying confidently, we're taking the ball first. I want to be able to possibly even take the air out of the ball just a little bit with Caleb Jackson, run the ball, wear down this Iowa State defense from the jump, and then get in the end zone, and then have this entire crowd just come to life. And then you have Sebastian Castro and Xavier Nwankpo walking on the field with them at their back, and Jay Higgins and all of the other talented players on this defense for Iowa. You have all of them walking on the field with the crowd. You have all of them walking onto the field with the 12th man behind them. So that's something that I think could be huge, is if Iowa can get on the board in their very first drive, if they take the ball in their very first drive and go down and score, this crowd might be hard to stop the rest of the day, and Iowa State is going to be fighting an uphill battle. So I do think that's kind of the way to go about business. Take that ball, go down and score, and then get this crowd really buzzing in Iowa City. And then matchups to watch. Iowa State wide receivers against the Iowa secondary is the obvious one. When you have Jalen Noel, when you have Jaden Higgins, and then when you have Sebastian Castro and Xavier Nwankpo on the back end for Iowa, it's going to be incredible to watch this unfold. Whether it's the matchups or just how well people tackle, all of the different things that go into this, it's going to be so much fun to see this unfold. And then Iowa O-line against the Iowa State D-line. We know that Iowa wants to run the ball. That's the way they go about business. If Iowa State D-line can hold their own, they don't need to win this battle by any means. But if they can hold serve, if they can put themselves in a position to stop the guy with 2 yards gain instead of 5 or 6 yards gain, they're in a really, really good shape. And then, again, the Iowa State O-line going up against big-time players on the Iowa D-line, whether it's Aaron Graves or Brian Allen. Keeping Rocco Becht safe is the biggest thing in this game, because this guy is so dangerous in every single sense of the word. If you can keep him protected for 3 seconds, it's either going to be a wide receiver open downfield, or it's going to be him being able to take off and make a big-time play with his legs. So keeping him upright for as long as possible and then letting some of that magic unfold is the way that they're going to want to go about business. I can almost promise you that. And I hate picking this game. This is one of those games that you toss it up in the air. Every rivalry game is always a little bit crazy, but this especially is one that I just have no beat on every single year. But I'm going to pick Iowa State. I put it on the wrong side. I apologize. I have Iowa State winning this game. I totally messed up this graphic here, but Iowa State I have at 24. Iowa I have at 20. I do think Iowa State has enough to get this one done. I think the wide receivers are very, very talented and a little bit of a barn burner in the Cy Hawk Trophy, at least in terms of what they've done in past years. This would be downright a shootout, I can tell you that. So I did get this wrong. I apologize. I do have Iowa State beating Iowa. Maybe this is sending me a sign that I should be picking Iowa, but I'm going to pick with Iowa State. I'm going to stick with them, and I do think the Cyclones get it done for the 8th in the last 9 meetings between these two teams. But very, very fun game. Every time I see that one in week 2, I get a little bit excited because I know it's going to be a little bit ugly. I know it's going to be a little bit of a rock fight, but that's why you sign up for Iowa State. It's always really, really fun, and although I messed up the graphic there, I do have Iowa State winning that game 24-20, and we'll see what happens. It's always so much fun for that game, and one that holds a lot of weight over there in Iowa, that is for sure. But let's take our second break here, and we're going to get back to predicting some games. We got to get to Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Tulane, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, a couple of big-time games in that noon slate that we just got to get on your radar, and I got to pick. So we'll get down to that right after this, so stick with us.